Hello, everyone. I'm Chris Gleason. Some of you may not know who I am. You may not know the work that I've been doing. Who here knows who James O'Keefe is? Okay. Do you remember when he got forced out of Project Veritas and he launched his new thing, and they had all of these elderly people who made thousands and thousands and thousands of donations to Democrats? Yeah. Well, that was all my work. That was all the stuff that I was doing.
Good job. Thank you.
So, what's pretty interesting, right, is as we look at the data, because I'm a data guy.
Hey, I'm a widow.
I'm about facts, and I'm about evidence, and I'm about computers. And so politicians lie, attorneys lie, the numbers and the data, it doesn't lie. And so what we found is some pretty interesting stuff, right? We found that there are these individuals who, unknowingly to them, are donating thousands and thousands and thousands of times in an election cycle to Democrats. Kind of crazy. We had one lady who donated some 60,000 times to Democrat candidates. That's a lot. So, like, with a show of hands here, who donates more than, say, 2 or 3 times during an election cycle?
Okay.
How many times?
5 for one candidate in Michigan.
Okay.
John James.
All right. Anyone else? Anybody else make multiple donations? Okay, you. How many?
Trump, Matt Gates, 14.
14?
Matt Gates and President Trump.
Okay.
And then I'm getting my balls breaking with all these text messages from women.
So, you? Yeah.
So
Okay.
can I say something one more?
Yeah.
Trump is coming out with a direct address so you can send him the donations directly.
That's good. He needs to do that because Win Red and Act Blue are in on it together.
That's right. That's what I was trying to say.
And so a lot of these campaign finance donations that we saw, right? Financed by China and other bad actors elsewhere, that money got funneled to guys like Cocaine Mitch, ambiguously gay Lindsey Graham, McCarthy.
I'm going to Kentucky and find it.
So this is true. This is factual, right? So what we find is that some of these people are donating 500 times in a single day. It's humanly and physically impossible, right? So as we look at the data, right there, we see them using algorithms to steer money where they want them. They're doing the same thing with the voter rolls. They're doing the same thing with ballots. They're doing the same thing with votes.
I just ordered 500.
And so here in Pinellas County, we have this really neat anomaly called blank ballots. And so people say, well, what's a blank ballot? Well, yeah, it depends on who you ask. If you ask Julie Marcus or Dustin Chase, they'll say a blank ballot is a blank page of a multi-page ballot. If you ask the voting machine manufacturer what a blank ballot is, they're going to tell you it's a ballot, regardless of the number of pages, that is 100% blank. How about that? If you ask the EAC, all right, the guys that make all the rules, okay, for all the voting machines, the certification for the voting machines, you ask them what a blank ballot is. They're going to say it's a ballot, regardless of the number of pages, that is blank on every single page. Now, how many people here think that Donald Trump won in Pinellas County in 2020?
Not me.
You're all wrong.
Yep.
He lost.
Yep.
He lost.
Yep.
But he really didn't lose, okay? We know he won. And how did he lose? Well, he lost by 1,241 votes, allegedly, right?
Yep.
But there were many thousands of blank ballots. and many, many, many thousands of duplicated ballots that were damaged, so they had to be recreated and adjudicated. So we caught that here in Florida first. Started in Lee County, and then we made our way throughout the whole Florida. And then we expanded our efforts into Maryland. And when we did that in Maryland, we found that in all of the counties that Donald Trump lost in, there were large numbers of blank ballots and large numbers of fraud. Same thing here in Florida. Crazy, isn't it? We see the same thing happen. The same thing happened in Arizona. Wherever you have large numbers of blank ballots on the ES&S machines, okay, you have Republicans losing. So how does this happen? Well, it's easy if the machine is connected to the internet. You know, and a lot of people, you know, we put up a big stink about this in 2020 and then 2022, and they're, oh, no. The machines aren't connected to the internet. Bullshit. And we found it. We found it from ES&S. In their own documents, we saw, and it says, the DS200 tabulators connect to a secure file transfer server connected by modem via the internet. And so if you have a machine with a modem attached, right, that means that the EAC certification for that system in its entirety is void. Void. So the question is, how do you certify an election legally if it was conducted on a machine with no valid certification? How does that happen?
Fraud.
Bingo. So what happens when you start requesting information and data about that? Well, we, in Pinellas County, in the legally required election reporting documents that they are required by law to file, right? They omitted the blank ballot data entirely off of the official election records. And we caught them on it. And so I sued Julie Marcus over this. And then we had a corrupt judge. Who said, oh, there's nothing to see here. It doesn't matter that there was 40-something thousand voters who were disenfranchised. Actual disenfranchisement of Pinellas County voters. That makes me mad as a veteran. Does it make you mad?
Yep.
It should. You know, how did Julie Marcus win in 2020 by over 40,000 votes, but yet Donald Trump lost by 1,241? Does that make sense?
Nope.
So, with all of the stuff that we investigated here in Pinellas County and elsewhere, we built a nice mosaic, an understanding of how this cheat was going on. And we got this data from places like Pennsylvania, from Michigan, from Wisconsin, from Texas, from Illinois. And so we get a really good picture about what's really going on here. And Pinellas County, I don't know if you knew this or not, it's a bellwether county. And how Pinellas County typically goes is how the rest of the United States goes. And I'm going to tell you, it's that way for the fraud too, all right? Because the data that we saw nationwide, and I've looked into the audit logs, I've looked into the reporting in all of these counties and all of these states all across America. And Donald Trump won by a very, very, very wide margin. Very wide margin. And so we know how they did it. We know how they've accessed the machines remotely. You're starting to hear some stuff now about how Bosnians helped breach our elections. Okay? Because that's true. I have whistleblower testimony about that. And you know, but we have to ask here what's going on here in Pinellas County, because this is where we live, right? So we all came together and we said, hey, you know, we need to have an investigation by the grand jury. And we went out and we gathered, I don't know, some 200 separate letters from different folks. Maybe some of you here signed a letter asking and requesting for a grand jury investigation. Okay? And so we went and we got our stuff together and we needed to present our requests for the grand jury investigation to the grand jury. So we asked the clerk of court, we asked, where and when has the grand jury been convened? And they're like, we can't tell you that. Really? So we went down and we did our homework, we did our research. And they're required by law, the chief judge of Pinellas County is required by law to post his judicial announcement, the judicial notice of the grand jury that gets impaneled every 6 months to investigate felonies. And so they're like, oh, well, we don't have it. I don't know what you're talking about. So we went and showed up at the courthouse. And then we went and we asked the state attorney's office. And then we went to the jury manager for Ken Burke's office. And they're like, oh, that's top secret information. I'm like, really? That's funny. Because on your website, right here on your website, it says that an administrative order is defined as a directive necessary to administer properly the court's affairs. And all orders must be signed by the chief judge, and it's supposed to be posted publicly. So how is that top secret? Crickets. Well, that's top secret. Well, no, it's not top secret. It's an election record, kind of like the election records that Julie Marcus has illegally been withholding. Now, did you know that in most states, if an elected official or an election official is withholding election documents, it's a felony. It's also a felony if they do it in a federal election. Interesting, isn't it? And so the question is, why won't Bruce Bartlett participate in helping us bring all of this facts and evidence that's real to investigate the election fraud that we know happened, because it did happen, and we have all the proof of it. Irrefutable proof. We have irrefutable proof that Julie Marcus altered election records, concealed election records, lied. Okay? So, what do we do now? Well, here's the thing. Where does all government power derive from? From we the people, right? The consent of the governed.
Supposed to.
And if you don't have the consent of the governed, then you have an out-of-control criminal regime running the show, kind of like in Haiti. Isn't that funny?
Yeah.
Well, welcome to the post-constitutional, post-rule of law America. Because there are people here who hold themselves out to be Republicans, okay? Hold themselves out to be patriots. And they're rigging the election because they're beneficiaries of this massive fraud, this massive RICO operation. Well, I don't know about you, but I'm mad. I'm fighting mad.
Yep.
Because this isn't the nation that I served. This isn't the nation that my grandfather served. This is, and I'm not gonna leave this mess to my kids. I got 3 young daughters, and I'm not gonna leave a mess for them. And I'm sure that you all, because you're here tonight, you don't want that either. And so what we need to do is we need to hold these people accountable, okay? We need to get Julie Marcus out of office.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay? We need to get her indicted, because
Yep.
that's what we need. We need Julie Marcus and Dustin Chase and their co-conspirators indicted for what they've done. Now, I don't know how many of you are aware of this, but Florida has this awesome thing. It's called the treason statute. And under the treason statute, there's this thing called subversive activities and subversive individuals and subversive organizations. Did you know that if 2 or more people conspire to overthrow the government of Florida or the United States via terrorism, violence, or unlawful means, they have committed subversion? You know what happens if you're convicted of subversion? You can't hold public office.
That's right.
Ever again. Ever again. And if you have a pension, you have breached the public trust. And you lose your pension too. And this is how we take our country back. Because you know what? We saw yesterday with the Supreme Court, right? We saw the baloney. Where they're saying, oh, well, you know, free speech, yeah, you know, the government can collude to... No, it can't. It cannot. It cannot. This is our nation. Because all government power is derived from the consent of the governed. Because we get our rights from God. Amen. Not from man, not from a piece of paper. Okay? That's the truth. That is the truth. And it's up to us, because nobody's coming to save us, okay? Nobody's coming to save us. It is up to us to hold these people accountable and say, no, this ends today. This ends today. So what are we going to do?
Elect the right people.
Well, if we can have a real election, right?
Yeah.
So here's the thing. We have to demand that all of the records be out in public. We need to get rid of the machines, because I'm going to tell you, every single one of them is compromised.
Yep.
And I can tell you where and how. I can tell you exactly how it's going on. I can show you in the audit logs of these machines how they're changing the scan points, okay, and making a ballot that was cast a straight Republican ticket, right, as 100% blank, or a ballot with a vote for Trump is counted as a ballot with a vote for Joe Biden. I've seen the audit logs, okay? In Hillsborough County, I saw the audit logs, all right, that show 3 ballots cast with 2,847 votes. How does that work? Doesn't. That's fraud. And that's what we have. So how do they do this? They do it by algorithm. Okay, they do it and they calculate this out, right, based on early voting. So my solution that I'm asking you all to help us with, right, is we have to demand that all of these records are made public, okay, because there's nothing top secret about our election records. Okay, they're public records. We paid for them. They were generated in the course of them doing their official duties. It makes it a public record. Period. End of story. But here's the thing. No vote by mail. Nobody should be voting by mail. Tell everybody you know, do not vote by mail. Okay? Do not do early voting. Do not do that, because if you do that, you give them information and data so that they can help rig the counts, because that's what they're going to do. Because we see it. We know that that's what they're doing. They're injecting malicious code in the ballot definitions that are being programmed. So it comes in one of two ways. Either comes in from when they program the election, or it comes in via the modem that's connected to the internet. And that's just the way it is. And anybody who's out there telling you, we're going to go out and harvest them, they're full of shit, because it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, because you know what? It's who counts the votes and how they count the votes that matters. And, you know, if the goal, right, is to get as many of us together and cast as many a vote and ballot that we can so that we overwhelm the system, the only way that we can do this is if we only go out on election day. Because they're not going to know what number that they're going to have to come up with. They're not going to know it. So that's how we do it. Because, you know, we caught them before in 2022. We caught them. And so certain counties, they got the memo not to steal the election via blank ballots. And you know the funny thing about that, all the counties that got that memo, right? Every one of the counties that they had ever increasing numbers of blank ballots in the elections, suddenly they went to statistical 0, right? And you know what? Amazingly, Republicans won in those counties. Amazing. In 2018, All right, this is the most egregious one I've seen yet. Right? In 2018, in Broward County, Florida, they reported on the official election results, okay, that they omitted the category of blank ballots entirely in their official election results. But then when we got the real data, we found out that there was 181,000 blank ballots cast in Broward County in 2018. That worked out to be over 25% of all the ballots cast in Broward County were blank. That is unacceptable. That is completely unacceptable. And so when we caught them on this in 2022, they went out, the election fraud, the Florida election fraud mafia, right? They all went out and they passed this bill. It's called SB 7050. It was the Florida Election Fraud Legalization Act, where they tried to hide the data from us in the reports. But unfortunate for them, we figured it out. And we figured out other ways to get the data. So we got the data. And now it's about lawfare, and it's about holding them accountable, and it is about telling all of our friends and family to only vote on the one day, no vote by mail, and hold them accountable. Hold them accountable. Did you know that the Florida Constitution, by the way, maintains an election day? It doesn't say election season, it's an election day. So by them holding a multi-week or multi-day election, they're actually violating the Florida Constitution. And so what we need to do is we need to hold them accountable about that. We need to file lawsuits, and we need your support. We need signatures. We need voices, because we need to let them know that they do not have our consent to continue to steal our election and destroy our nation, because that's what they're doing. And we can do this. We really can. But we need your help, and we need to make sure that everybody hears this message. Okay. Anybody else have any questions?
I have a question. If you've been a by-mail voter for years, how do you undo it to vote that day?
Take your vote by mail ballot with you to the poll and tell them you want to vote in person on that day
With the ballot?
with your ballot.
Okay.
That's what you want to do.
How do we get rid of the machines?
Blow them up. I do it.
That's one way. The other way is lawfare, and we're doing that. We have a lawsuit right now pending in Maryland that I'm involved with. And Maryland has a unique part of their law where it's mandatory decertification of the voting systems. And so we're attacking the tabulators there based on the fact that they had modems connected, and the fact based on error rates. So that's why they're fighting us so hard here in Florida on the audit logs, because Florida has a law where it allows for a lot less errors than the federal level, okay? Florida law only allows for 1 error per 1 million ballots cast, okay, 1 error. So you have 181,000 blank ballots in Broward County. We know that didn't happen, okay? So that's how we're fighting it. And so that's how we're going to try to get rid of the machines.
Those Dominion voting machines, their offices in Toronto, there's not one damn machine in Canada.
Well, you know that
That office is set up out of Venezuela, and it was set up to make it look good to sell them to us.
So ES&S was the oldest and the longest running voting system, okay? And then in 2010, ES&S was broken up into 2 companies. All their technology was broken up into 2 companies, ES&S and Dominion. And so Dominion, they're coding the elections in Bosnia. And we have whistleblowers that coded the elections and predetermined outcomes in races. I have video of them talking about it. So we have to get rid of all the voting machines, not just the ES&S.
Yeah.
You got BlackRock.
The question I was trying to get through the beginning was,
BlackRock owns it.
who decides on what voting machine we're gonna use for the elections?
So the voting system has to be approved by the Secretary of State's office
Right. They're
first.
getting that.
Okay, and then once it's approved there, then, the county can make that determination. But in order for the Secretary of State to be able to make a decision, they have to abide by what the EAC says, the United States Election Assistance Commission, because they're the ones that certify all the voting systems nationwide. Now, you're going to hear, you will hear different answers, okay? And they're going to give you different answers. They're going to say, well, Florida has our own standard. Well, actually, it does have our own standard, sort of. But the Florida certification rests upon the federal certification. And the reason why Florida has its own certification is based on the error rates, okay? Florida will allow for 1 error in 1 million occurrences. Federal is 1 in 125,000 occurrences. So, but Florida doesn't test for penetration testing. They don't test for security. They're clowns. They are literally clowns.
Well, what was, why did they change machines? What did we have previously? Did they stop working or?
That was before we had the hanging chads, right?
Oh,
And-
Lord,
And then after that, they had the touchscreens that because of a clerical error, were flipping votes, like we saw in Pennsylvania in November. And by the way, that, as a software guy, that's not a clerical error. That's intentional. It's a feature. It's a feature. It's not a clerical error. So.
I have a question before you start. Do we know how many people vote twice?
Do we know how many people vote twice?
Democrats.
The reason I ask that question, I go all the way back to David Jolly. I worked in the office as the office manager. The election came through, we got the results, he happened to win that year. And the regional field director come in and we were breaking up the office and he said, I have something to tell you. I said, what's that? He said, we had 592 people that voted twice here in Pinellas County. So I said, well, how could that happen? And he said, because they send out absentee ballots to people who live up north. They fill out the ballot, they send it in, and then when they come to Florida, they vote. So I just wondered if we keep records on how many people vote twice.
Well, you're supposed to. And what we saw tied to the smurfing stuff, okay, nationwide, we have these individuals who are not only donating in multiple states, okay, they're also voting in multiple states, and they're voting by mail in multiple states. So there's a woman here in Pinellas County, she donated to Fannie Willis's campaign 4 times, okay? She made campaign finance donations out of Michigan and out of Florida. And you know what? She was registered to vote by mail in Michigan and in Florida. And this is not an anomaly. This is a standard operating practice that we see. So, but no, because here's the thing. You remember how the colonel was up here? He was talking about how you have these key states, right? Well, you got these people, okay, because of the ERIC system, right, that are registered to vote in all of these states. So when we find these people, right, we'll have John Pence. Let's say we have John Pence, right? John Pence is registered to vote in 4 or 5 of the battleground states, okay? And he's making campaign finance donations in all of these states to all of the same candidates on all of the same days for all of the same dollar amounts. And so, yeah, we do see that, and that's the reality of it.
We were the first state to vote Donald Trump off the ballot. Did you know that?
I couldn't hear you.
I said Florida was it the first state to try to take Donald Trump off the ballot.
I didn't know that.
And it's fact, because they had a big voting, and 39 of the 67 voted him to be on the ballot. So the other dirtbags that we all have to find out about.
Yeah.
We were the first state. Like the legislature, the House, they wanted to say that. Yeah. See, a lot of people don't know that.
Yeah. So, okay. So this is that's a really good question. Okay. So what was really funny about that Maine case? Okay, there was a case that was won by election integrity organization headed up by Cleta Mitchell. All right, she was a Trump attorney. She is not a good person, by the way, and she was firmly on Team DeSantis. Okay, now here's why that is important. Okay, because the same stuff that they've won in Maine over the unreasonable charges and the hiding of the voter roll data, okay, is the same thing that they passed in SB 7050 here in Florida, okay? So here in Florida, in particular Pinellas County, Dustin Chase and Julie Marcus, they hit Defend Florida with a public records request charge upwards of $400,000. And I requested the precinct level reporting data here in Pinellas County, and they tried to charge me $35,000 for that. Now, mind you, it literally takes 2 minutes to generate the report. You click on a button, and then you have a drop down, and then you click on that, and then you click again, and then you click one more time, and then it generates the report. And their whole thing is, oh, it's, there's trade secret information. Well, here's the thing about our elections. There's a law that says that a Florida governmental agency cannot enter into a contract if that software impedes the ability for the public to get public records. So it's an unlawful contract. And so that's one of the things that we can use to try to get rid of the machines, because we're fighting this everywhere, okay? We were so effective, in fact, at these audit reports and these audit logs in getting these nationwide, that ES&S sent out a bulletin to all of their customers warning them not to give Chris Gleason at the Justice Society these records, because it was a trade secret and it could impact the integrity of the election. No, it impact their cheat, impact their treason. That's what it would impact. So as a matter of fact, in Maryland right now, okay, we caught them dead on everything, and we caught them on hiding election records. We caught them on this thing. It's called the Machine Configuration Report. Right? This report tells us how the tabulators are configured. Right? And it tells us whether or not they're storing the blank ballot images, because we found out that they don't, okay? And we found out that in some places they're not notifying a voter that their ballot was adjudicated as being blank when they cast it in person, okay? That's a big problem, huge problem. So what do they try to do? They try to hit us with unreasonable requests for dollar amounts. So, you got to give us $25,000 for that. Well, actually, no, we don't. It's a federal election record, and the fact that you're concealing it to cover up your public corruption and your RICO enterprise, that's a felony. And it's a federal election record, so it's a federal felony too. And did you know that for every record, every single record that they do this with, it's a 1-year jail sentence. And it's for each record. So in Maryland, right, we've got them on probably, 200,000 counts of felonies. I mean, so we got them, I guess, but we got to hold these judges accountable.
I got one more question. Okay, if you want one-day voting, paper ballots, what about the senior citizens? I have a bad back, arthritic back.
Communism's great, isn't it?
But here it is. here it is with the senior citizens. There's a lot of us that have arthritic backs, bad legs, that cannot stand in long lines for not even 10 or 15 minutes unless they have a walker or something to bring with them.
So let's make a party out of it and bring a chair. You know what? You tell me your polling location and I'll bring a chair for you.
And what about all the senior citizens in the nursing homes and the ALS that cannot go out?
Oh, you mean the people that are in memory facilities that have 100% vote compliance? I mean, because that's what we have here in Pinellas County. I mean, so think about that. I look at the data. I did the voter roll for the entire state of Florida. I did the voter roll here in Pinellas County. Okay, and there are places that are Alzheimer's units. Okay, where you had 100% of all the patients there voting. 100%. There's buildings in downtown in Clearwater. Okay, where 100% of the people that live in the buildings there. Okay. And by the way, these big buildings all had vote by mail ballots sent to them, and there was no apartment numbers. How does that work? And 100% of them all voted. So, you know, at the end of the day, you might, you know, I'm sorry that you feel arthritic, okay? I have an arthritic back too. I was in the Army. I have repetitive motion injuries.
Yeah.
And, you know, I lost a lot of buddies overseas. And they, you know, they bled, they died, and they made a sacrifice for our right to cast a vote. I think we can inconvenience everybody a little bit and vote on one day.
You know what, when it comes to that, I know, like you go to a Trump rally and 10, 15,000 people show up. Somebody has trouble getting around, guess what?
People help.
They give them a special line, you're first.
Yeah.
That's how you fix it.
That's how you fix it.
But the thing is, we gotta get these senior citizens that are Republicans out to vote somehow, some way. If you don't want them to mail in their ballot protection or do mail-in ballots, some way, somehow, you send your citizens in the ALS and the nursing homes that have good brains, good minds.
So if you can have a polling, so you can set up a polling location at one of those facilities. That's not a difficult thing. And I you know what? If they didn't pay millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars for these voting machines and these maintenance contracts, okay, then there would be a lot of money for that. I mean, we could have Pinellas County Supervisor of Election could have a remote voting system set up where they could bring it out to each one of these places. They could easily. But here's the thing. Freedom isn't free.
Oh, I know.
And we have to all make sacrifices. And you know what? Maybe what really needs to happen is that America needs to have a one-day national holiday, right?
Yeah.
Where everybody votes in person on one day with their voter ID. And you know, what the Colonel was saying earlier about the illegals or non-citizens, okay, voting, that's a fact. Because I went to Ron DeSantis with that myself. We'd obtained through public records requests the screens, the training screens for the DMV, okay, where I have them. And it says, do not say anything that would discourage this person from registering to vote. And that includes saying, are you a citizen? Think about that. That's crazy.
California's got that right now.
Well, Florida has it
Mr.
too.
Gavin Newsom wants the illegals to vote in his state.
Is there a penalty, I have two parts, is there a penalty on illegals, non-citizens voting in federal elections? And number two, if it can be proven that any state has illegals voting in federal elections, can we discount all of their federal elections?
Well, here's the great thing about fraud, right? It's a very simple mathematical formula. And this was explained to me by a mentor, attorney friend of mine that I worked with up in Maryland. A brilliant attorney by the name of Walter Charlton. And he's like, fraud, Chris, it's a simple mathematical formula. He's like, fraud is equal to zero. Fraud is equal to zero. 0 times any number is what?
Zero.
Fraud vitiates all things. And that's the truth. Now, is there a penalty? Well, yeah, there's a penalty. But what difference does it make? Because nobody's enforcing it. I mean, I literally could show you all, right? All of the emails that I have to Julie Marquez, Dustin Chase, Adam Ross, Bruce Bartlett, Ron DeSantis, Court Bird, Ashley Moody, Pick the One, FEC, EAC, okay? I could show you detailed emails showing, like, point blank, they committed this election crime. Officials committing this election crime, that election crime. Felonies, multiple felonies. But if we don't hold them accountable, right? What then? So you can have all these great laws, but if nobody's enforcing it, and nobody's holding the people accountable, then what difference does it make? But we got them. We do. We really do. We know how they did it. We know what they're doing. And we just got to hold them accountable. But the big thing is we can't give them an inch. We can't let them know how the vote is going to go. We don't want them to know how many ballots that they're going to need to pre-run, to rig the game. Because believe me, they're checking it. And they're doing it by the e-poll books. So when you go and you vote, right? If you go and vote early, they know that you're a Republican. Because the e-polling book is going to tell you, and that data gets referenced, and that gives them the number. And by the way, when we see all these blank ballots and all this crazy stuff going on in the audit logs, how do you have 5 or 6 polling locations, right? How do you have 5 or 6 polling locations that have the exact number to the percentage, to the decimal point of blank ballots being cast?
Who is Julie Marcus running up against in the next election? Do you have any idea?
She's running unopposed at the moment.
Okay,
We're going to fix that.
yeah.